This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Germany and Italy start coronavirus vaccinations early as more countries report cases of the UK variant. Tunisian government bans all public gatherings and prohibits flights from Australia, South Africa and the UK. And polls open in the Central African Republic in elections under the threat of violence by rebel groups. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, Nigeria's automotive startup to create a single marketplace for Africa. And in sports, we take a look back at some of the legendary sports talents that have passed away in 2020. More countries are now reporting cases related to a new coronavirus variant first detected in the United Kingdom. Canada confirmed 2 such cases, a couple in Ontario who have no known travel history or high-risk contacts. The province is now under lockdown. 4 have been found in Spain. All involve people who recently arrived from Britain. Officials say their conditions are not serious. Sweden has also detected a case, also a traveler from Britain, who has been self-isolating. About 10 countries and regions have reported the mutated virus. The German state of Saxony-Anhalt started vaccinations a day before today's official start of the campaign. On Saturday, tens of thousands of vaccine doses were delivered to regional health authorities. The German health minister says the government is planning to distribute more than 1.3 million doses in 16 federal states by the end of this year. In Berlin, vaccination vans are being deployed from Tegel Airport. The airport has been refitted as a vaccination center. Well, CGTN's Trent Murray is in Berlin and is joining me live now. Trent, European Union nations have kicked off a coordinated effort to give COVID-19 vaccinations. What is the latest on that?
Well, Beatrice, a pretty momentous day across Europe as this mass vaccination campaign begins. Over the past couple of days, we've seen specialised trucks and planes crisscrossing across the continent, delivering these doses of the vaccine. And it's all really built up to this moment now. Those inoculations have officially begun. As you said, one state in Germany started a little bit earlier than the rest. The first German citizen to receive the vaccine was a 101-year-old nursing home resident. She was very happy when she got the vaccine. She had a big smile on her face, and I'm sure that those are pictures that will bring relief to a lot of Europeans who are watching at home, seeing just how much the virus has ravaged across Europe in the past couple of months. These vaccines ultimately provide a little bit of across European Union today. All those 27 member countries report successfully receiving the vaccine and will start delivering the doses. In Berlin, we have just heard in the last half an hour an update from the city's health chief. They said they're very pleased with how the progress is going and that and care home residents have been vaccinated. We are expecting more doses to start to be delivered over the coming weeks. From there, that then beyond nursing and care home residents and start to make its way out to the general population.
And of course, Trent, affordability and access to the vaccinations and distribution were just some of the issues that had been mentioned earlier on. What are some of the challenges that still lie ahead?
Yeah, well, the main challenge, of course, remains not just getting the vaccines across those 27 member countries of the EU. The EU is also trying to help some of its neighbours that aren't in the European Union, like Norway and Iceland. That, of course, adds to those logistical challenges. Another one is the fact that there is such a limited supply of the vaccines at the moment. There is simply not enough to go around. And so it is a really difficult choice for a lot of governments to try and decide who should get the vaccine first. Here in Germany, the priority is getting it to those people aged over 80 that live in nursing homes, as well as nurses and carers that work in their homes. health experts say they're the ones most vulnerable to coronavirus. Once that group is protected, then other essential workers will be able to be given the vaccine, as well as people that might have pre-existing conditions that make them vulnerable, things like diabetes or asthma or other serious illnesses. So a lot to do, but today certainly is one of the good news days, it has to be said. I'm sure a lot of people will be very pleased to see the vaccines finally starting to arrive.
And many countries, Trent, are now reporting cases related to a new coronavirus variant first detected in the United Kingdom. How worried is Europe over the new coronavirus strain?
Well, I think Europe remains on high alert over this new strain. Of course, those health experts in the UK said that this new mutation could be up to 70% more infectious than the original coronavirus. More countries across Europe are reporting cases. France, Sweden, Denmark, Italy, all reporting cases. Spain as well. And one of the health chiefs in Madrid said that there was no reason to be alarmed. There was 4 cases detected in Madrid, but none of those 4 were seriously ill, but they've all been placed in isolation. The vaccine, sorry, not the vaccine, my apologies, this new mutation rather has made its way even to Japan. So I think health experts, again, remain on high alert over it, but there is hope that the vaccines will be able to protect people against this new variant. So the real priority remains trying to get those vaccines out as fast as possible and ensure people continue to follow the advice about social distancing and protecting themselves.
Trent Murray joining us there from Berlin. Thank you. Well, the National Committee tackling the coronavirus pandemic in Tunisia has prohibited all public gatherings, including those marking New Year festivities. During a meeting with the country's Prime Minister, the scientific committee also maintained that all current preventive measures and health protocols. The country has also barred flights from Australia, South Africa and the United Kingdom to curb the spread of a new strain of the coronavirus. Adnan Chauchi has the details from Tunis.
The Minister of Health says the sanitary curfew has been extended and businesses that don't comply with the restriction, including hotels, restaurants and entertainment venues, will be penalized.
We will strengthen controls and impose a strict observance of preventive measures until January 15, 2021. The curfew will remain in place. The ban on movement between regions is maintained, except in emergencies. All public gatherings and meetings are prohibited. Public and private celebrations are not allowed, including the New Year festivities.
Tunisia's Civil Aviation Authority has reduced activities at the Tunis-Carthage International Airport to a minimum so as to prevent the spread of the new virus strain.
Unfortunately, we have suspended arrival, departure and transit flights between Tunisia, the UK, Australia, South Africa and Denmark following the detection of a new COVID-19 strain. We will probably suspend flights to and from other countries. These measures are temporary until the epidemiological situation improves around us and in the world.
Thousands of artists have protested against the stay-at-home orders at night, especially during the winter holidays and on New Year's Eve. Musicians, singers as well as business owners have denounced the state's extension of the curfew and the travel ban.
We must resume work immediately. Artists, musicians and tens of thousands of people earn a living from restaurants, nightclubs and lounges. Maintaining the curfew and travel ban will push people into poverty.
The Health Ministry has warned that any breaches of the new measures will be considered an offence under Tunisian laws, and those found guilty shall be liable to a fine and imprisonment for a maximum term of 6 months. The COVID-19 pandemic will change the way people celebrate New Year's Eve this season. Analysts assert that maintaining the curfew and the restrictions in place for shoppers will have negative social and economic repercussions on the population. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, when COVID-19 cases started to spread across the African continent, several countries immediately put strong containment measures in place to curb the spread of the coronavirus. CGTN's Robert Nagila now revisits some of those interventions by African governments as they battled the pandemic in 2020.
By the time the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a global pandemic on March 11, 2020, no African country had imposed a lockdown yet.
We're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity.
By the end of March, several countries, including Morocco, South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal and Kenya, had all reported confirmed cases. By March 19th, Morocco, which had 63 cases, declared a state of emergency. Meanwhile, a week after recording its first case, Rwanda imposed the first total lockdown in sub-Saharan Africa on March 21st. By then, the Central African country had registered 17 confirmed cases. Among the measures taken by the government were a ban on movement for 21 days, except for essential services, the closure of its borders, land and air, except for cargo. On March 26th, after a spike in COVID-19 cases, South Africa imposed a total lockdown.
Those countries that have acted swiftly and dramatically have been far more effective in controlling the spread of the disease.
Kenya, meanwhile, imposed a partial lockdown in mid-March. The government introduced tax breaks, a $5 million package to support the tourism industry, and a moratorium on debt payments, among others, to support small businesses and protect jobs.
There is no doubt that this pandemic will test us, as it is testing all countries in every corner of the globe. But I don't believe that it will defeat us. If we pull together and everybody does their part, we shall, with God's grace, overcome the worst impacts of this virus.
African countries also adopted WHO guidelines on physical distancing, hand washing and the use of masks in public. But countries had to balance between imposing a total lockdown and avoiding the consequences of prolonged economic disruption. In some cases, security forces were deployed to enforce lockdowns. WHO says the first COVID-19 vaccinations in Africa will begin in mid-2021, which means the continent will continue to see some form of restrictions to control the spread of the pandemic for the foreseeable future. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, as Africa recorded the first coronavirus case in February, the United Nations predicted severe impact on the continent. The body had projections that the pandemic would kill at least 300,000 people while pushing 30 million to poverty. Lack of proper health infrastructure and economic incapacity would justify that. Well, 10 months down the line, the casualty projections are far from reality. Africa remains the least affected continent by COVID-19.
The experience of dealing with other outbreaks might help, but as you know, again, COVID is a specific disease that need to be dealt with specific measures. So it has helped, yes, but to some extent, Africa was as well in a learning curve like any other region. In general, African countries, I think they took the right measure at the right time. I always emphasize on this. Right measure, yes, but right measure at the right time is the right thing to do. So I think this is the result of course, other factors, including social factor, demographic factor, but also the impact of human intervention. So measures that African countries, or most African countries, took at the right time. I think this is why we are seeing the current figure of pandemic in Africa. So many initiatives at community level. For instance, we were wondering how could be Africa manage with hand washing issue when in most of our areas, I mean, access to water, access to soap is a problem. We have seen some coming with very innovative approach to hand washing devices. So those are some of the innovations at very household level or community level. But there are also innovations that I think they can help not only African countries, but other countries as well. We have seen in African countries that they come up with technology, using technology to do contact tracing. One also that stood out for me was the tracking of truck drivers, since they have to cross borders, through electronic and using technology. And for any country to fight in an effective manner a pandemic and an outbreak, you need the community to get engaged. You need the community to get involved.
China and Africa for decades have enjoyed strong bilateral ties. Continued collaboration has seen growth in trade and other areas. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the ties have remained strong. CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar takes a closer look for us.
2020 was a year where the world had to deal with not only the coronavirus pandemic, but a hard-hit economy. Through it all, China and Africa remained partners. Beyond being a partner in Africa's fight against COVID-19, China has pushed to maintain trade. The country hosted the China International Import Expo in Shanghai, where African companies got an opportunity to make deals and establish ties. And when the COVID-19 pandemic started to hit Africa, China stepped in. Chinese companies and individuals like Jack Ma donated thousands of personal protective gear to the continent. Medical experts were sent across Africa to share their knowledge on how to combat COVID-19. And now, as the conversation shifts to the COVID-19 vaccine, developing countries are looking to access the vaccines. Chinese President Xi Jinping has pushed for multilateral response, pledging to make Chinese-manufactured COVID-19 vaccines available to developing countries. Already, countries like Egypt and Morocco have received batches of the Sinopharm-produced COVID-19 vaccine.
We have received the first shipment of the COVID-19 vaccine. This is the first of the air freight supplying us with a vaccine. It's a historic day. We work continuously to guarantee the influx of the vaccine to the Egyptian people. That is thanks to God and thanks to the deep friendly relations between us, the Emirati people and the Chinese people.
Collaboration between mankind is the strongest weapon to face common threats like the COVID-19 pandemic. I am happy to witness this moment. The arrival of the Chinese vaccines from the UAE to Egypt shows that China is always keen on positive cooperation when it comes to the vaccine, whether it's through the development, the production, or fair distribution.
As the world continues to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, China seems set to continue its collaborative relations with the African continent. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Polls open in the Central African Republic in elections under the threat of violence by rebel groups. And Somalia's Electoral Commission announces new poll dates.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent, to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To the Central African Republic now, where polls have opened, allowing residents to choose a new president and parliament. Incumbent President Faustin Archange Touadera is seeking a second term in office. There have been fears of escalating violence as the government tries to hold off a rebel advance on the capital, Bangui, as armed groups hostile to Touadera have stepped up attacks since the Constitutional Court rejected several candidates earlier this month. The head of the United Nations mission in the Central African Republic says the mission is determined to help people exercise their right to vote in the country's presidential and legislative elections.
From the United Nations side, we have received 300 additional peacekeepers from our mission in southern Sudan to strengthen the security measures in Central African Republic. We are determined that the Central African population have the right to vote.
Well, let's cross over now to Kofi Kouako. He's an African analyst and senior research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Kofi, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. Now, the Central African Republic elections are going ahead despite instability in the country. What's your take, particularly on the legitimacy of the process?
Good day. I think the legitimacy of the process will be sort of very mixed. It won't be trusted enough, especially by the opposition leaders who are screaming out loud to say that this won't be a legitimate process. In part, they're right, because almost 2/3 of the country is under their control. And one of the key person, the key man, Francois Bozize, has been sort of written off from the list of the candidates. So that's very, very important. However, on the other side, internationally, the UN is supporting those elections. The UN has done everything almost to make sure that these elections take place. But Bangui is probably the only place that seems to be at peace and organized and a bit stable. The rest of the country is not. And that makes it difficult for a full legitimacy of these elections.
So the UN wants to ensure that the election takes place, and it does say it is determined to help C.A.R. people exercise their right to vote in the presidential and legislative elections. How important are these elections to the C.A.R. and its people against the background of such instability?
What it does is it gives the impression of the illusion of a democratic approach to electing, key leaders of this country. But we know, history, the events, have shown to us that the C.A.R. has been unstable. The cycle of insecurity and instability and changes and coups there have been so many of them, about 5 and more, that it is difficult to see elections as, if you want, something that's going to fix, as a panacea to fix all the problems. There are a lot more bigger problems. The elections, even after the election, today is Sunday, and even if Touadéra is proclaimed the president, the situation on the ground will not change suddenly or in the short term, let alone even in the medium term, perhaps in the long term. But there are geopolitical issues here involved. There are 3 elements to this. The first one, of course, is national, where you have actors vying up to take power, with Touadéra in the opposition and Francois Bozize behind it. And then you have the regional leaders where you have, for example, Rwanda now involved in this, and of course Burundi. And then the other international element, the third leg, is the international element, MINUSCA with the UN, but of course now with Russia involved in it to help secure Bangui, and then of course Touadéra. And hopefully with this kind of security, perhaps things will change a bit, but in the short and medium term, I don't see how this is going to solve the problem. These elections are just a surface of something much bigger. However, it is my hope that Touadéra, with his name as Archange, which means archangel, will be able to call the divine gods an archangel to help him. But I don't see any peace in the next short or medium term taking place.
All right, Kofi Kouako joining us there from Johannesburg. Thank you. On to Somalia now, where the Electoral Commission has announced a new election date, despite a strong condemnation from opposition politicians. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello reports from Mogadishu.
The Federal Electoral Implementation Team has announced new changes to the election timetable for members of parliament and senators.
The election of the upper house seats will be held between 31st December and 6th January. The election teams at the federal and regional levels will commence registration and verification of clan elders and electoral delegates on January 7th.
As per the previous timetable, elections for new senators was set to take place between 1st to 10th December, with election for lawmakers due to take place between 10th to 27th December. Members of the opposition, among them more than a dozen presidential aspirants, have voiced their opposition to the Federal Electoral Implementation Unit, accusing the government of planning to alter the outcome of the presidential vote planned for early February 2021.
If inclusive elections do not take place, a government with no legitimacy will be formed. And if a government with no legitimate mandate is formed, this will in turn create political instability that can destroy the country.
Clan elders and electoral delegates will pick the 11th Somali parliament. This after leaders failed to agree on how to conduct a popular vote that will be the first in the country in half a century. Elections for senators will take place in 5 of the country's federal states. Regional parliaments will elect the senators.
The only way to end the electoral impasse between the government and opposition is the review of electoral commission representatives in both the regional and federal level. Opposition is accusing the government of appointing security personnel and civil servants in the commissions. The only way to this is dialogue between authorities and the opposition.
Election is expected to commence in regional states that enjoy close relations with the federal government of Somalia. Puntland and Jubaland are yet to confirm their participation, and it remains to be seen how the government will handle the fallout from the elections, with opposition calling for massive anti-government demonstrations in case the government goes ahead with the votes. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The Tunisian government says the COVID-19 pandemic has affected housing and infrastructure projects in the country and the region. During an online meeting of the Council of Arab Ministers of Housing and Reconstruction, experts outlined difficulties that the sectors face, as well as opportunities available during the post-COVID-19 period. Adnan Chauchi has the details.
The Tunisian Syndicate of Real Estate Developers has revealed that over 60% of building and housing projects have stalled since the outbreak of the pandemic this year. The experts say that the first general lockdown in March and the second wave of the pandemic paralyzed this vital economic sector.
Real estate developers are on the top of the pyramid of the construction sector. The impact of the pandemic has been disastrous on all related business activities like building materials, brick, ceramic tiles, marble, cement and steel factories. The list is very long. Tens of thousands of jobs were lost due to the COVID-19 crisis. The cost of building is much higher because companies are facing difficulties and the price of building materials has skyrocketed.
Authorities in Tunis say that developing affordable social housing is a national priority. They want urban development plans updated so as to devote more space for social housing projects.
There is a gap between population growth and economic growth. Tunisia witnessed skyrocketing prices of real estate and the deterioration of purchasing power during the pandemic. We want to control prices to meet the needs of low-income groups and encourage property developers to invest in social housing.
Experts have noted that nearly a third of the Arab urban population lives in slums or informal neighborhoods. The Arab economy could experience a 5% decline due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which will push up to 25% of the Arab population to live below the poverty line.
We'll provide some 10,000 houses within 2 years. Uncontrolled construction proliferated during the pandemic. Rising land prices and high construction costs of new houses are among the main causes of this phenomenon. The state's role is to intervene by facilitating access to land. There are challenges but also opportunities in this period.
According to the UN Human Settlements Program for the Middle East and North Africa region, 70% of the Arab population will reside in urban areas by 2050. The number of urban dwellers is also expected to more than double between 2010 and 2050 in the region.
12 ministers took part in the online Arab Housing Conference in Tunisia this week. They agreed to offer financial and fiscal incentives to the private sector to foster the implementation of the social housing projects and to support property developers who are affected by the pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Nigeria's automotive startup to create a single marketplace for Africa. And Egypt establishes Incubator to empower the youth.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Now, at a time when funding for startups is difficult to come by, a Nigerian automotive tech startup has raised $3.4 million to expand its operations in Nigeria and Ghana. The investment follows AutoCheck's acquisition of the Cheki brand in Nigeria and Ghana in September. CGTN's Deji Batmos has the details.
The funding is a clear indication that even in the face of the debilitating global COVID-19 pandemic, investors' appetite is still high, and some local tech companies can still attract huge investments. Etop Ikpe started AutoCheck in August this year after leaving another auto tech startup C.A.R 45, which he co-founded. He says AutoCheck was born out of the need to disrupt an underutilized and untapped industry.
So AutoCheck is an automotive technology platform that basically on one end gives customers access. So we have an app, and on that app, it gives customers who download and use the app the ability to, one, apply for fast and affordable car financing. So if you want to buy a car and you need financing to support your purchase, you can get that very rapidly approved. It also gives customers access to maintenance services. So if you have a car you want to maintain, do anything around your car, service, whatever, you also can get that service there because we have various service providers. The third aspect as well is that if you want to buy cars, you have verified cars on the platform that come with warranties and maintenance contracts as well. So in a nutshell, it's an application that gives consumers the opportunity to manage their entire automotive life.
With its acquisition of Cheki Nigeria and Cheki Ghana, AutoCheck has already hit the ground running, with more than 20,000 unique vehicles listed on its platform, and more than 12,000 dealers and private sellers, as well as a range of corporate partners and customers. Ikpe says the $3.4 million funding will help the firm quickly scale its operations through better technology offering.
AutoCheck came to being because I saw so many problems that were in the industry, and the reality I saw was that there weren't problems that can be solved. You can't just say you're going to solve the financing problem alone, or you're going to solve the maintenance problem alone. I saw that each of these industries support each other. So as someone who is providing financing, if you finance a car, you want to know that that car is being maintained properly. If you're a workshop and you want to service a car, it's better for you if you're tied to a trading network of dealers. If you're a dealer, you want to ensure that when your customer has any problem, they can go to a reliable workshop to get their car maintained. And these were all the pieces that we saw that at the end of the day, these are the restrictions that are giving the market stagnation. And that's the reason why we saw it as an opportunity, and we decided to focus on solving that opportunity.
Ikpe and his team have big ambitions. They want to rival top global automotive trading platforms like TrueCar and AutoTrader, as well as dominate the market on the continent.
I think that if I'm going to put my mind to doing anything, I want it to be something that can, one, affect a lot of lives positively, can create employment, can create youth empowerment, and it's one, we have Pan-African dreams. I want to do something that can really solve problems not just in Nigeria but across Africa.
Combining technology and data to power every process of the automotive transactional ecosystem for millions of people, AutoCheck is hoping to transform the automotive industry and make it easier for financial institutions like banks and fintechs to assess customers' credit worthiness in giving out loans. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In Uganda, residents of Port Bell along the largest lake in Africa are optimistic that the government's plans to develop ports on the lake will spur further economic growth. Port Bell serves as a critical logistics link to Tanzania to the south and Kenya to the east. Leon Sinyange reports.
This is Port Bell, a major inland port on the outskirts of Uganda's capital, Kampala. Dickson Katende calls this place home. He has lived here for over 2 decades now.
People of Port Bell like life. They could breathe off the lake to come and eat their fish, chill down and relax their minds so that they can think for future.
Named after British Commissioner Hesketh Bell more than a century ago, the port has gone through a series of transformations. Ruth Akankwasa now earns her pay selling fish at the market in the area. She admits the port still offers less for its potential.
Our place is bigger than some ports, but its planning is still poor. If you move around, we have shops. People like being here. We only need better infrastructure.
Nearby, the ferries are berthed, and many of the young people can only look on, hoping for work. Some have settled for the odd jobs that come by. More than 1,000 people live and work on this port, but with limited opportunities. There is hope that will change when the water transport route from here to other ports on Lake Victoria is fully developed. There are already plans to remodel the port that will allow more ferries from Kenya's Kisumu and Tanzania's Mwanza ports to dock here. It's a plan Saleh Muyinda wants to see come to fruition.
At Port Bell, we only have parking for 2 or 3 ships. The government wants to expand. Some of us have applied for jobs when that happens. We are hopeful.
The government wants to turn Port Bell into a small-scale cargo port. Local passenger traffic will be enhanced too. Those are plans Saleh, Dixon and many others around Port Bell can only wait on. And hopefully that will inject more life here. Leon Sinyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
The Egyptian government has established an incubator to teach young entrepreneurs steps to open and operate small businesses. The move came after authorities realized the majority of the youth who established small projects failed thereafter due to lack of experience. The Cairo-based state-owned incubator called Rollout 2030 is enabling young people to establish private projects and support business entrepreneurship. Here's CGTN's Yasa Hakim with the rest of that report.
It is the graduation of the first batch of aspiring entrepreneurs at the state-owned Rollout 2030 project. This is an incubator that was established to help the youth set up successful business ventures.
The graduation projects today are centered around how high-tech can solve the challenges we face. There's a project in the health services, a project on education, another one on economic development and digital transformation.
The Rollout team provides the solid base and experience for young entrepreneurs as they embark on the new adventure.
We work on 3 dimensions. The training and teaching process is done through an accredited Cambridge University certificate, in addition to courses at the American and German universities in Cairo. We then follow up with them with consultancy and advice after they begin their project. Another dimension is awareness. We reach out to as many youth as possible, even in schools and universities, to highlight the importance of entrepreneurship as a career choice. It's better than looking for a job or employment.
Nermin Al-Khatib is the founder of one of the winning graduation projects.
It's mainly about, it's like a digital platform whereby all the entities concerning with urban planning, whether governmental entities or private entities or even students who are studying urban planning, they are concerned. We're connecting all these parties together so that we can reach the maximum profitability.
El Khatib says the Rollout 2030 will also help her connect with potential investors to fund her project. Experts say encouraging youth to establish SMEs is a benefit to the economy.
Most of the emerging economies are supported with the startups and small and medium enterprises. Therefore, it was crucial and essential to have this program up and running. It is a way to elevate the economy, creating more jobs, enhancing the standard of living and social living for the community as well.
The success of this program has prompted the government to set up similar incubators in different cities around the country in the near future. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, frustrated by seeing store shelves in Cote d'Ivoire lined with almost exclusively light-skinned dolls, Sarah Koulibaly decided to launch black alternatives so that African children can find their own identity in play. It has proved to be a clever business move, as well as she says demand is soaring and supply remains short. CGTN's Beryl Oro has that report.
'Tis the season, and preschool children in Jacquesville, Cote d'Ivoire line up to get their Christmas gift from Santa Claus. Until now, dolls would be fair-skinned and dressed in Western clothes. But this year, Naima Dolls is breaking the mold.
We have already seen in other sectors like cosmetics or hair products how the claim of an identity can change the course of the market. We have seen it. So when African women started to complain about the fact that their skin color did not exist in the cosmetic industry, there was a total revolution in that market.
Naima Dolls was launched 5 years ago to fill a gap in the toy market, and demand for black dolls following African fashion is high and growing.
We do not produce enough dolls relative to demand. That is why we want our own factory. That is what justifies that decision. Because today we are convinced that, well, we can see, by producing abroad, we can see how quickly we run out of stock, how much demand there is for the product, and so to get to the levels where we can satisfy, because there's nothing worse than creating a need and not being able to satisfy it.
I like everything that makes up the African woman. I like the materials, the traditional African materials worn by women across Africa. We got used to white people's dolls, and now we can see. Now we see black skin, the African woman.
She aims to mass-produce the dolls first for the market in Cote d'Ivoire, then Sub-Saharan Africa, and eventually the rest of the world.
What we wish for today is to give children, the future generation, the weapons that will allow them to make the right choices. I just want for the African children to become conscious of the fact that they can also say, I'm beautiful, my culture is beautiful, my identity is rich.
For the moment, the dolls are designed at home in Koulibaly's Abidjan studio, then produced in China and Spain. They are then dressed, prepared and boxed by more than 20 women at Naima Dolls and then distributed for sale countrywide.
My first wish was to see my product grow commercially. But when it comes to the way the product is used, yes, of course, it is that we can accept ourselves as we are, and beyond that, the fact that others can also accept us as we are.
The company makes 32 different products. Out of these, 6 cost just over $18, with the most popular doll called Ajoba showcasing plump features, a celebration of African beauty and culture. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Live still ahead on the program. We look at rehabilitating of inmates through art in Tunisia.
The year 2020. It was a year like none before, shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa, seemingly spared the worst of it, still took a huge hit with unprecedented disruptions to healthcare, the social and economic order. Climate change also took its toll on Africa. Shifts in temperature affected food productivity and availability of water, and the overall security of the African people. The continent saw major political changes too. Several countries held successful elections despite the pandemic, while others made strides towards lasting peace. This was 2020, a year unique in so many ways. CGTN will highlight some of the top stories we covered as the year unfolded.
Invasion in several parts of the country.
A gallery in Tunisia's capital, Tunis, is hosting an exhibition showcasing artwork by prisoners from across the North African country. Around 800 male prisoners and 250 female prisoners have been able to create artworks while respecting social distancing. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi tells us more.
According to the General Directorate of Prisons and Re-Education, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to many challenges in Tunisian prisons. Inmates have not been able to meet in the clubs that have traditionally been the forum for the creation of artworks.
This art exhibition features some samples out of thousands of fantastic paintings and works created by prisoners during the COVID-19 pandemic. The prisoners have a lot of energy. Majority are between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. We're investing positively in this energy to get the best out of these people who are looking for support.
This prisoner has spent 7 years behind bars. He has worked hard for over 6 months to prepare for this exhibition. The inmate says art has changed his life.
I've learned handicrafts during my incarceration. Now I don't care about the time spent because I'm planning to start a mosaic business when I leave prison in 2 years. I'll never return to jail again. I'll be a good citizen who creates and sells artwork.
The project manager at the Ministry of Justice says art is a constructive activity through which people can express and manage emotions, unearth new talents while creating a vision and hope for a more positive future.
The successful art project shows how the justice system in Tunisia is responsible for a comprehensive rehabilitation and reintegration service for offenders. Our role is not to punish the incarcerated individuals who can have the tools to return to a normal life. Hopefully, the society will neither denigrate nor ignore former prisoners, but rather accept them because they are willing to change.
The managers of the prison arts program also shed light on the role of many trainers and art teachers, as well as volunteers who have been helping prisoners to embrace the therapeutic qualities of art.
The Ministry of Justice is providing the human and financial assistance to the prison arts program. Experts assert that art could facilitate the rehabilitation of offenders and their successful integration into society. Adnan Chauchi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now let's shift our focus to South Africa once again. Daniel Ramotseng is an artist who uses his skills to draw attention to crucial matters in society. He does this through what he calls Township Art and focuses on children's issues in particular. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela tells us more.
When we visited Daniel Ramotseng, he told us that he likes telling stories of ordinary township people, but he quickly emphasized that most of his work is about children. This he does to capture a child's innocence, pureness, and emotions, the artist says.
Every time when I walk around the township, whenever I see kids playing, interacting with each other, it reminds me of my childhood. Even though many things have changed in these days, things have changed. We have technology, we have everything that kids can want, but there are still those things that are still the same. They still play the same. I remember we used to use rocks or bricks to make cars, to play cars. They still do that even now.
The artist tells these stories in a form of portraits. A portrait is a painting, photograph, sculpture, or other artistic representation of a person in which the face and its expression is predominant.
Sometimes you can look at the person by just his face or her face. It can tell you a lot. A face, just the expression of somebody in his face or her face can tell you if the person is angry, happy, or excited. So I try to capture that with my art.
Ramutseng was recently involved in a project that involved using art to deal with children's issues, to teach children to use art to express themselves.
We were trying to keep them away from the streets. So I got involved in the program. I was part of the people who were taking care of the kids. But seeing that the kids, sometimes they don't concentrate, sometimes they lose focus, I joined them. I joined the class to try and keep them busy, to try and make them more serious. I was a part of the class and I took lessons with them.
Ramutseng uses paper collage and recycles magazines to create his artwork. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. We'll be taking a look back at some of the legendary sports talents that have passed away in 2020.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
In 2020, the world has bid farewell to Hall of Fame talents